sit cross-legged, right? Do your legs go to sleep? Yeah. Okay? Okay. So that happened to me. And what you have to do is experiment with types of cushions and sizes of cushions, high, low. So she was having a lot of struggle. She was like 24 years old. And you think, you know, her body's in a lot better shape than some of us, right? So so I actually sit on the corner, just under my tailbone, on a low cushion. And it's fantastic. So she tried that, and then she said, oh my gosh, it really makes a difference. So don't feel like these round cushions, because you see these in centers. Some people really like them. But one center I went to, that's all they had, and I'd sit and my legs would go to sleep. So again, you try on your own what you think, what works for you, and you'll find you'll be able to sit better. You have to experiment a little bit. Are you good at this?
Yeah.
Thanks, Wendy. The most important person in the room, the person that runs the microphones, right?
It's John today.
And it's John. Thank you, John. I'm not super AV inclined myself, but it's so important sometimes when a big teacher comes, I mean, not like me, but a big master, and you want to get all the teachings, you want to have it recorded, and we had some disastrous results at other centers, and sometimes I was running the AV, or the old days when we would tape it with cassette. Remember those days? Cassettes. There's some generations don't even know what that is anymore, cassettes. So we were all excited when we got 90-minute ones, and there was a little tape player that would automatically switch to the next one. That was a big thing of technology. We're going to also talk about technology today. So one thing I want to ask you, please, right now, because we'd like to spend something that can lessen your anxiety and depression, because that's the topic of this weekend, is I think to lessen your distractions. And part of that is giving yourself technology holidays. Okay? So what I'm going to ask, because we want to focus here right now on this so we can really pay attention, is to actually shut off your phones. And the reason is when they vibrate, your mind goes right there. And if we're doing a little bit of meditation, which we will do, I hear it, it distracts people. And so if you can just do me a favor, you're really doing yourself a favor. And somehow, because I look around the room and a lot of you we're similar ages, so we remember before we were allowed to be interrupted continually, right? So think about it. Let's just start right here. This is the beginning. Think about that vibration, whether your phone rings out loud or it vibrates, somebody's allowed to interrupt you. Okay? And now we have this thing where any moment, wherever you are, somebody feels that they have the right to talk to you at that moment. And funnily enough, in the last 2 weeks, I was somewhere teaching, I think, maybe in Florida, and I was in a bathroom in a department store or something, and my father called, and now we can see who calls. So, just think about, let's try to go back. We're going to go back a little bit to when it was simpler to some degree. But anyway, and so I saw that it was him. Now he's older, he's elderly, he's doing well, but I felt like if he calls, I need to take the call. And I took it, and he was fine. He just wanted to, talk. And then he said, well, where are you, or something? And I said, I'm in the bathroom. And, I thought, he can't even be there without, just having a moment. And so what that does, though, you don't get a lot of space for your mind. And when you don't get a lot of space in your mind, first of all, that heavily contributes to anxiety. Okay? but you have to check for yourself. So what I will preface this with is, and I want to thank you all so much for showing up and coming and making this time in your life, and I hope it will be worthwhile, is to just be kind to ourselves, I think, and think about that I'm giving you some information today. So I really do want you to check up on what I'm saying. Don't just swallow what I'm saying. Don't just believe it all. Really, you have to place it in your life. Is that what she said this, so let me try that. Let me try that and see. If it doesn't work, then leave it. But if you find something beneficial, fantastic, and then move from there. But it really has to be, you have to engage in this. So I can't force you to be less anxious and less depressed. It's like you actually have to participate in it. So that's one thing I wanted to say in the beginning. A lot of people I teach suffer from anxiety, depression, and many other delusions. We all suffer from something like that as a human. It's very common. So you're not alone in that. And to some people it's a very serious degree. To some people it's just a distraction through the day, that you'd like to change in your life. Like that. But what I find is there's a lot of people that even want to meet independently and come, but they just want to talk, but they don't want to do anything about it. They're just like, I'm always depressed. I'm just a depressed person. And you give antidotes and they kind of go, or they give you reasons why they can't do that. So that's okay. It's your choice to stay that way, but because the mind is an ever-flowing, ever-changing experience, you don't always have to be that way. So let's first get a little bit in touch with being present here, and we'll start with some meditation. And just mainly, the main part is to have your spine as extended as possible, as if the back is nice and straight. And normal posture in our tradition is you could have your palms face up, with the right palm on the left, with the thumbs lightly touching, kind of like this. And it's right just a little bit below the navel, right against the body. So when it's against the body, you're erect. If it's out here, you kind of slouch a little bit. So you just, nice, but it's comfortable. Okay, so you're not tight, but the shoulders are down, relaxed. And we're just going to start at the top of the head. And also the head is slightly tipped forward. The eyes are lightly closed or slightly open. Focus towards the floor or your tip of your nose. The lips are lightly together. And let's start from the very top of our head. And we're going to move down, scanning our body to release any tension we're holding. So first just start moving down through the top of your head, the back of your head, your brow, and just release any tension there you might be holding. Moving down through your face. And check your jaw, that's a place a lot of people hold tension. Just keep breathing into it and letting go. Release any tension you're holding in your neck and shoulders. In your back. And relax your chest and your waist. Relax your arms, Release any tension in your elbows, your wrists, your hands. Let it flow out your fingers. And down through your hips. It's an area we store a lot of tension. Release the tension in your abdomen, down through your thighs, your knees. And just relaxing down through your legs, your ankles, and letting it all flow out your feet and toes, bringing yourself to as relaxed a place as possible. And letting go any distractions of the day. And imagine right now the very crown of your head is a radiant crystal drop. This is a drop of gratitude. This is full, deep appreciation for yourself. And imagine it now sinking into your crown. Take a couple of minutes on your own and allow that drop to move through your entire body, letting that wave of appreciation move through you because you've chosen to be here today instead of doing something else. So let it wash through all the neurological activity, every blood cell, all the organs, everywhere, and let it also move through mental activities, your thoughts, ideas, memories. So just rejoicing and feeling that appreciation for yourself, for all the good that you are. If other thoughts come in that are not like that, let them go, returning yourself to this drop of gratitude. And slowly allow yourself to focus on your breath now. So wherever you are, that's fine. Just bring your attention to a normal, natural breath. Think about your intention for being here right now. And we like to set a positive intention as much as we can, putting our minds in a positive place. So think about the information you would like to get today. Some reason you are here, and see if you can expand that beyond the boundaries of yourself. To think about how that information may help you be of the most benefit to all other beings. So if you can connect that or align your motivation with what's called a Mahayana motivation, fantastic. Where we are focused on getting out of our suffering, reaching a fully awakened state. Because as a fully awakened being, as a Buddha, which means fully awakened being, we are completely unlimited in how we can best serve all others. So imagine that experience of knowing exactly what to say to someone who needs help, exactly what to do for them, exactly how to think. Perfectly, every moment. Take a moment, set a good intention for this time. Please relax. Get up and slowly open your eyes. We're going to turn in the Gold Prayer Book, page 120. The Prayer of St. Francis. I'm a big fan. I was delighted when the new Pope took the name Francis. I thought that was quite a statement. Brilliant. Humble. So let's read this prayer and think about the words that you're saying. Lord Buddha, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is discord, unity. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is error, truth. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is sadness, joy. Where there is darkness, light. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled, happiness for the ego, as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, it is in dying, having practiced, that we are born to eternal life, from happiness to happiness up to full enlightenment. May all beings effortlessly attain the transcendent, blissful state of omniscient Buddhahood. So I just want to ask you a question right now. So, any comments or experiences right now just on the motivation, drop of gratitude, this prayer, just on your mental state right now?
I feel very calm.
Feel calm?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Did anybody come in kind of agitated this morning? Anybody wake up on the wrong side of the bed this morning, right? Yeah? Okay, so what I'm trying to show you is in about, we've been here about 10, 15 minutes together already. So you got 3 techniques already. It doesn't take much. And the thing is, a lot of us in this room, we're not going to do 3 months retreat or, become a nun. That's fine. You don't have to do that to be a great practitioner. Not at all. It's really about everyday experience. We're all working people in this room, for the most part. So what we need is something when we're in the grocery store, when we're with irritating family members, when we're being challenged by somebody at work. We need something right then. So to begin with, and I don't know how many of you have a regular practice. How many people in here roughly have something regular going on? Okay, great. So what happens is when we don't have a regular practice, you don't have a refuge to go back to say some sort of support. And that creates a lot of anxiety and depression for people, I've found in my own life. And once you've got that little place, and I don't mean, you don't need an elaborate altar like this. This is beautiful. But in your own personal house, this is really not, possible, right? So you can have something very simple, but a place that's your quiet place to kind of come home. I really recommend, for a beginning, if you can start something like that. Like I said, my first altar was a cardboard box turned upside down with a scarf over it. So this is not about spending money and, I've got to go to IKEA and I've got to get the... No. It's about a quiet place that isn't heavily trafficked. Some people use a closet, big closet they have, or a corner of the room on the floor. That's what I've got now. Just have a little space, very little space. Maybe you have a picture you like there, maybe you just have a space for a candle. It's up to you, right? And if you want something really to know how to set up an altar in our tradition, they can teach you here. What do the water bowls mean, all those kind of things. But that's not the important. The important thing is that you have a little bit of time in the day, ideally most people do it morning and evening, that you can get in touch with yourself, with what's going on. Because this is about waking up and being aware. So in order to do that, you have to have some time that you're quiet. And that's really challenging for us. A lot because of our technology, okay? So, and what I find is the beginning is, I have a little space. It could be 5 minutes in the morning. But what you're doing is, you're getting up, you're having a motivation that today, and some people, I tell people, when you wake up and you're in bed to start the motivation, right? You're coming into consciousness, okay? And you're waking up and you realize you're awake now, but you're still in bed, whether the alarm went off or not, is right then start. You can do the drop of gratitude right then in bed. Because how often, and I'm just curious, how do you normally wake up? What are your, just give me some idea of your waking thoughts. Anybody? What's kind of a normal way?
Well, I suffer from nightmares and I wake up from anxiety every morning.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Every day you have nightmares every night?
pretty much.
Okay. So here's somebody who wakes up with anxiety. Okay, so she's got a habit of having nightmares. Other people? Other experiences?
Dreading another day.
Dreading another day, right? Isn't that common? Yeah. Yes?
Sometimes in the winter, I wake up and just start crying.
Because it's dark here in the winter. Come to Vermont, it's darker, right? Yes?
I wake up stiff.
Stiff, right? So there's a lot of a wake up of like a negative, I have to face another moment of this in my mind. It could be anxiety, pain, stiffness, another like, do you ever have your lists have just mowed over you before you even get out of bed? You're just so overwhelmed with,
Yes.
right? So what we're trying to do is short circuit some of that negative programming that's already in there. You've got a pattern. All it is a habit. That's all it is. So you don't have to give it any more airtime. It is just a habit. And what we're trying to do in spiritual practice is you're trying to make a new habit, something positive. Does it take time? Right? But it's totally worthwhile, and it's totally possible to change the thing. So even if you wake up every night with nightmares, I mean, it would certainly be nice to get to the source of why you're having nightmares so regularly. That's another thing. That's one thing. But if you wake up every morning, right, the first thing for someone who has nightmares every night, you'd wake up and I'd be like, wow, I'm in my life though.
Yeah.
That was a nightmare. This is my reality. You know, that's unfortunate, the nightmare, the night mind, the dreaming mind, that is if it's negative. But now I've woken up and like, wow, okay, I'm a human being, thinking, you know, good body and mind. I don't know your story and everything, but basically you're here.
Right.
So you got some level of intelligence, I think, and interest, and you're able to sit up and you're thinking and understanding. You know, that's fantastic. That situation alone makes up some of what's called a precious human rebirth, which we talked about a bit earlier in the week. So that alone, those instructions, that meditation is one of the main antidotes to depression. One of the main antidotes to depression is realizing you have a precious human rebirth. You have a perfect situation right now. Now, we'll say, well, I'm not perfect. No, you're not perfect. But you have every opportunity to work with your mind. There's many other situations that don't have that experience right now. And I just give an example of, we were just joking, I was visiting some people yesterday that had cats. We have cats at our center. People live with pets, right? Some of you have pets. You have to think about their situation. So you might say, well, my cat, when she sleeps in the sun, looks really peaceful and relaxed. You don't know the terror that goes on in the animal mind. We don't really know. Okay? But a couple lamas that I studied with said, if you were in that cat's mind, the domestic cat, okay, domestic cat, I'll put it this way, our pets, our dogs and cats that we live with, they say are at the very pinnacle of this giant triangle of the animal realm. Okay, they're only at the very tip is that level, of the highest level of the animal realm with the most comfort. And they still have utter terror in their mind. And I noticed, did you ever notice when there's a big bang in the house and they're completely freaked out? I just noticed these cats yesterday. You know, they're not really in control when they eat, and people pick them up when they don't want to be, they're sleeping and somebody picks them up, and then somebody holds them the wrong way, and then they want to go out and nobody lets them out, and then they want to come in and nobody's there, and I've seen it over and over, and this is like the pinnacle of the animal realm, that. So they said, still, if you're in that mind for a second, you'd be terrified, completely freaked out. So the rest of the animal realm. So if you could somehow go through on a regular level the 18 situations that make up a precious human rebirth, but you'd have to go through it regularly. So let me talk about that in a moment. So the main thing is you're waking up, and you can have this initial thought, like, I'm here in my bed, I'm safe, I'm okay. I mean, I don't know if you're safe in your bed, but I'm hoping that you're okay in your regular life. It's not a nightmare, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so I do suffer from nightmares, but great, I get another day to work on it. I've opened my eyes, work on it. So what I do right there is start a motivation myself when I'm waking up in bed. So often my waking thought, I know people will think this might be morbid, is first I have like fantastic, I'm in this body, I'm still in this life, great, this could be my last day. I'm definitely going to die, and my death could come tonight. So this is my last day, and I really try to think that this is my last day. So what I'd like to do on my last day, honestly, is I'd like to make it meaningful, as meaningful as possible. Because I only have one last day to practice, and then I could be in another form or another situation. But I have one more day to work with my mind. Great. So what would I like to do with that day? I'd like to really direct the activities of my body, speech, and mind towards something positive that helps others, as much as I can. So that's my motivation, and with that motivation, I get up. I get out of bed and do whatever I'm doing. Go to the bathroom, have a shower, brush your teeth, like that. Okay, so that's something really simple. just try that. Try that for a few days. Some of you may already be doing it, but try it for a few days. Because it takes about 2 weeks to make a new habit. So, try it for a few days, see if it's beneficial, but if you can keep it going consistently, if you skip a day and you miss a couple days, just start the next day. Eventually it'll start to come more automatically, and if you get through 2 or 3 weeks, suddenly you're going to be like, oh, my motivation, Leave yourself a note next to the bed, if that's helpful, to remind you, like near the alarm clock, or maybe on the bathroom mirror, or something like that. It's okay if you get out of bed and forgot. You can always just start wherever you are. Sometimes I'm brushing my teeth, and then I'm like, oh, because I rushed out of bed for something. I'm like, oh, my motivation. Just do it when you're brushing your teeth. So usually it's nice before you sit down to meditate or have a little morning moment is to wash your face, brush your teeth, just be fresh. Eventually, for those of you practicing for a bit, you might be doing some prayers, and some of it might be kind of, asking the Buddhas to come and be there with you. So you want to have, if you're inviting a guest to come, you want to brush your teeth first and wash your face. Just kind of common sense. You want to try to get yourself in touch that these images right now is that with some level of realization, there's actually Buddhas there. We see statues and paintings, but with higher levels of realizations, they actually see a Buddha there. So you want to try to get in touch that there are these beings there all the time. Okay? So, if it's possible. But then what you could do is then you could sit down for a moment, 5 minutes. Then you could do a drop of gratitude, if you haven't done it in bed. Because the thing is, you need to keep appreciating your life to cut depression. Depression doesn't want you to appreciate. Depression is a negative cycling in the mind, turned inward at yourself. Not inward in a good way, like Buddhists that are looking at, well, what was my responsibility in this? But it's a negative, inward, obsessive, focusing on everything you do wrong, that you're worthless, hopeless, I can't do anything for myself, nobody likes me, I'm lonely, and it keeps telling you those stories. So if you have that going on for 10 years, 15 years, you believe it becomes who you are. And it's simply not the whole story. Okay? So the gratitude, again, related to precious human rebirth, the gratitude is one way to do it, and a kind of alternative way is, so those of you, and I'm just, not to pry and things, people that suffer from depression, let's say. Do you ever get that story going, I'm useless, I'm worthless, nobody likes me, they're looking at me that way because they think I'm stupid, or I can't do anything right, I'm just sad all the time, right? So I want to just ask you, is that the whole story? Is that the whole truth for you? Right? There's other parts, right? So what happens is there's a habit and a pattern in depression that doesn't give any airtime to the good stuff that you do. So what you have to do, and we'll talk about some of the antidotes, we have to make time for that. You have to make time for that. So I also wanted to explain that we will take some breaks, but we're going to have a lunch break around 12:30, and we'll take a break before that so people can go to the bathroom and have some tea. And then we'll have an hour lunch, and then we'll have a session from 1:30 to 4 with a break. Does that sound okay? Okay. So I'm just giving you, so here you've got some tools right now. Lying in bed, I wake up, I set a good motivation. I have to practice setting a good motivation. I have to try and do it. I have to make a little game with myself that, can I try and keep it going for 3 days? The beginning I know is, can I remember tomorrow? Okay? Because I will ask you tomorrow. That's going to be a big homework assignment, is how you go to sleep tonight and how you wake up in the morning. Okay? But it's hard. Many times I'm in class and people are like, I didn't remember, Some people, if I'm in a week's retreat with them, every morning they forget. Well, it's just a habit of not doing it. Once you get the habit, so that's why I said, but you be gentle with yourself when you forget. Because if I look around the room now, there's a number of people here 40 or over. You can't remember anything at that point. So be kind to yourself. I forget all the time. on myself, I'm doing the best I can do, right? So why get down on yourself because you forget? Everybody forgets. What's the big deal? So you forgot. Okay, so I'm going to try again. But at some point I remembered. I remembered that I forgot. So then you remembered. Right? That's significant. But we don't give ourselves credit for remembering. All we know is I remember too late. It's never too late to practice. Right? A very inspiring practitioner I met him when he was 65. A Jewish businessman from New York. Delightful man. I met him in Dharamsala, India. He was retired. He and his wife had 3 grown children. They were moving from New York to Arizona to retire. And he said, I want to go around the world for a year. He said to his wife, I really want to do this. I want you to come with me. And she said, she thought about it, and she said, I'm not comfortable with that. That's just not for me. So why don't you go, and I'll meet you in different places, right? And he went for a year. And he and some of his kids met, for different places that he was. I think she met him maybe 3 times during the year. And I happened to meet him in Dharamsala. He just came in contact with Buddhism. He loved it. And he practiced for 20 more years until he passed away at 85. And he taught Dharma. He was teaching, and it was very inspiring. He started at 65, and he always said, it's never too late. He said, this is what I'm doing now. I've had all these other things in my life, and now I've made time, and I want to figure out about meditation. And so don't feel like you can't change something in yourself. So now we've got motivation. We have a drop of gratitude. And the thing is, I read this prayer because sometimes there's some little inspiring thing. And some people I know tape it to their bathroom mirror, or because you read this prayer, and the prayer is about others, isn't it? That's what St. Francis was about, serving others. So part of the thing, and I'm more focused right now just on depression, but we are going to talk about anxiety and other negative mind states. Depression is about me, circling around me. Right? As soon as you take the focus out to someone else, it's really hard to stay depressed for very long. Now there are deep clinical depressions. I think there's depressions that sometimes a little bit of medication can help you start to deal. I'm not totally adverse to medication. It's just to be on it for the rest of your life, maybe not the best idea. But some people find a little bit of a beginning solution if they need that. And it's just a habit in the mind. And sometimes very deep depressions, if you have a belief in reincarnation, which Buddhism teaches, it may not come from any source in this lifetime. It may come from previous activities in a past life. People say, why do I feel this way? No one in my family has any history of depression or mental illness, and since I was 15, why am I like this? And I never did anything before that. It's just past life stuff. So one way to also look at it is it's a form of purification when you're sick and when you don't feel well. But it's changing all the time. You're not stuck in that situation. But when you feel depression, and when you're really stressed and full of anxiety, if it's really harming you, it's a form of cleaning out, cleaning away. Anytime you suffer. Okay? But I just wanted to go back with the prayers. Find something inspiring that moves your mind out of me, myself, and I, and read it. Read it in the morning. Sit down, have a little motivation, drop of gratitude, 2 minutes breathing, and thoughts are going to come. I'm worth this. No, right now, I'm just focused on the breath. I'm not focused on that thought. I have, 23 hours and 45 minutes a day to focus on that thought, but I'm not doing it now. Okay, you have to really, and some of it takes a lot of effort. To keep the mind there, no, I'm just going to calm myself down. You said you felt calmer, right? A lot of times just that breathing, and then we did also the relaxation for people that suffer from anxiety. So here's the other thing. Do you ever breathe fully? Anxiety, you don't. In anxiety, you're shallow breathing. I know when I get stressed, I'm like, it's all up here, and I'm not getting oxygen to all the, so of course I'm stressed. I'm more stressed. So sometimes that whole adage we have, count to 10, usually in the face of anger and things, but count to 10. But I notice if I'm getting stressed, I'm like, you can take 2 deep breaths. All of a sudden I'm ready to respond negatively, and even in the breathing, I might notice how stressed I am. Awareness of the stress. Fantastic, frankly. Not fantastic that I'm stressed, but that I'm able to just be aware that right now, and here's the thing, de-identify with the emotion. Right now, I have a lot of stress in my mind. Right now, I have a really dark rain bank of depression in my mind. Rather than, I'm really depressed. Or I'm completely stressed right now. You see how it's different? It's like this is something moving through your mind, okay? And because of that it's moving through your mind, it changes. It is like clouds in the sky. They shift and they will be gone at some point. That's how clouds are. Sometimes there's a clear blue sky out there like today. And sometimes it's totally obscured with a bank of dark rain clouds. Our mind is like that. Our mind is not depression. It's not anger, it's not jealousy, it's not anxiety. Those are situations that arise in the mind due to previous imprints of them, previous habits. That's it. Okay. Do they feel really conscious and stiff and solid? Sure. Okay? It's just a habit and it's how much energy we want to give it. Okay? So we want to keep being, the biggest focus is awareness. Biggest focus is sometimes I just observe how much anxiety I have in my mind. Or how much of this or that, how much of this delusion is in my mind right now. Sometimes I'll just, do you ever get, you're just a little irritated at somebody? I got irritated, something fell off the dresser behind something. And you have this little like, oh. Right? So I just, all of a sudden I noticed, I was like, yeah. So, and here's a tip about, we're going to keep doing this through the weekend, for those of you that can come both days. The reminders of adding something positive as you notice the negative thing arising. This is your antidote, adding something positive. So if you want to have a negative thought about yourself, and if you even want to notice that, well, I'm really severely depressed right now, when you said, I wake up and I just cry, the winter, like that. When you have those moments, and it's awareness of it, and then you know what? There was a moment in the kitchen, an hour ago, and I wasn't crying. Right? Because you don't cry all day, it's just you wake up in the morning, right? But it's not all day, right? So I don't choose to be aware of the moments when I'm not that stressed. I'm not that depressed. There are depressions that it's through the day, but there's sometimes it's a little lighter. But I don't choose to notice that. I notice when I'm really depressed. Right? Doesn't it work that way? So what you have to do is give airtime, build a new habit to notice the times that I'm not feeling that way, that I'm feeling better. To notice the times that I am calm. So I'd really love you to chart those today, if you can. Okay, so you have to introduce, every time there's a negative thought that arises in the mind, your homework is, I need to have a positive thought. Something positive I did. And it could even be just a moment of quietness in yourself. Or maybe an observation that you notice the mind getting stressed. That's huge. That's a huge thing, the awareness. So what I find with these prayers is, this is a very short prayer, is suddenly it starts to get me to think about others. And from that immediately, there's like a calming down. I don't know if some of you notice that. Like I just take the focus off myself for a while. That's the source of our suffering, by the way. Okay, I'll give it two names. We're going to talk more about this. Self-cherishing and self-grasping. They're different. Self-cherishing and self-grasping. And I'm going to repeat some things again, just so that we, I don't want to go too fast. So self-cherishing is self-absorption, selfishness. I'm superior, I'm the best. It can also be I'm the worst. It's the same thing. Very focused on the self. Me, myself, and I before anything else. That's a huge source of suffering. So a little exercise you can also try is notice when you're really tweaked. You're really upset about something. What are you thinking about? My agenda? What I wanted you to do for me? What I didn't get? Why I have to have it this way? A lot of it's this self-focus. Okay, self-cherishing. Self-grasping is I have a misunderstanding about how I exist anyway. And from that misunderstanding of layering on myself that I exist concretely, independent of any causes and conditions that made me, independent of any parts, I'm the center of the universe, I'm the most important thing in the world, and based on that mistaken idea, I grasp onto it. It's the most important thing in reality. Self-grasping. Grasping onto that self and holding it there as if it exists, what we say inherently. Inherently means independent of any causes and conditions or parts. Independent of, concretely. Basically, if it were me, I wouldn't be able to change. That's how inherent things exist. They're frozen in time. They come from nothing. They've always been in that form all the time. Well, none of us exist that way. Right? That's common sense. But that's how we hold on to ourselves. So self-cherishing, self-grasping. We'll keep talking about those as well. So I find any time you can introduce to the mind some idea about others, helping others, notice first of all what it does to your depression. It's really hard to stay in there for very long. So some practical antidotes with depression are do something for someone, do something kind for someone else. It can be really small, it can be big. And just see if it's maybe a little exercise every day, and if you're too depressed and can't do it every day, once a week. You have to make effort. It takes a lot of effort to get out of deep depressions, but you can do it. Okay. So one example I had, in my 20s, I had some depression at one point. And I lived in Washington, D.C., and upstairs lived an old woman. And I was really in a bad way and working too much. That was part of the problem. I wasn't taking many breaks, and I was working, and I took myself very seriously. I was building a career in my 20s, but I just was working too much, and my mind just kind of got, gets into this little hole. And all the other things that go on around you of self-esteem issues and, competition of people I worked with, and anyway, on and on, like anybody can understand. And then, so I came home one day, and I was really, I would just work and come home, and I had no fun. No, I just come home, go eat dinner, and go to sleep, and get up and go to work again. Well, no wonder I was depressed, right? But I came home one day, and mine was always dark, what? And the old woman who lived upstairs happened to come home at the same time with packages. So I remember seeing her, and I had this little, how possibly does she think she's going to get upstairs with those packages? How, the negative mind gets into this, But of course, when I saw her, I said, can I help you? I didn't see how she's going to have to come downstairs again, and maybe the packages would be gone by the time she came down. And so a natural thing, I'm going up the steps, I said, here, please, can I take one? And of course, you know, and I helped her with all the bags, and I got upstairs to her apartment, and she was so happy, so genuinely happy, and it was such a pleasant experience that how happy she was, you know, because I was just like unhappy, you know, so it was my whole morning, noon, and night. But to see somebody so happy because of something I did, it immediately like started to pop, like all of a sudden I was like, oh, you know, and the depression was like a little less. And so I was kind of like, and I wasn't into the Dharma then, but I remember just noticing and thinking like, wow, that felt better. That felt so much better. She was so happy. So the next day, or 2 days later, I brought her flowers. Because I, again, was back in my depression, you know, like that little experience ended. And then I thought, well, you know, I so enjoyed seeing how happy she was, I wanted to make that happen again. And so I bought her flowers and showed up, and she was so happy, you know. And so those little experiences started to pop me out of it, where I realized, well, if I just did something kind for somebody else, it's really simple. Look what it did for me. So was it self-serving? Well, a little bit in those days, sure, but it was a good way. If you want to be selfish like that in serving others, right? Make sense? Question, yeah.
What about this concept of codependency and doing it with not, the motivation is not, it's a different motivation.
It's a different motivation because codependency is also about me, myself, and I. Bodhicitta, so I want to also talk about bodhicitta, we'll talk about through the weekend. The antidote to self-cherishing is bodhicitta, is to develop. Bodhicitta is a Sanskrit word. Bodhi is enlightenment, citta is mind, the mind of enlightenment. So what is the mind of enlightenment? It is about, I have such a strong desire to get enlightened, to get full, to become a Buddha. Why? Because then I'm unlimited in how I can best serve all others. So it's all about serving others. And there's also methods to develop bodhicitta. Methods to develop bodhicitta. So that's the cure, the antidote to self-cherishing. So codependency gets mixed up with bodhicitta. Because bodhicitta is, if you realize bodhicitta, you're considered a bodhisattva. Okay? A bodhisattva is like a Buddhist saint. And they're someone that all their passion in life, every direction, everything they want to do, is all about helping others. All about helping others. And they derive incredible happiness and bliss from that experience. So it's interesting for us, because with us it's kind of like, you know, we'll take a break and it's like, I want some tea. I want to go to the bathroom. At lunch, I'm hungry. Like it's all about feeding us. Feeding me, myself, and I. And that's where I get my happiness. But that happiness is always really temporary and limited. And then I notice if somebody else really isn't happy, I'm not really happy. You know, and sometimes you serve yourself too much, and then you really, and that I find contributes to my depression, frankly. So what codependents tend to do is they team up with someone or a few people because of their needs. There's holes in them, and so by me doing this and serving in this way, it seems like I'm serving them, but it's really, something's missing in me, and that's why I have to do this. So there are types of busyness that we all engage in that we think is really beneficial for others. But in a sense, that could be a codependency as well. So for instance, if you're with an alcoholic, a drug abuser, substance abuser, somebody who abuses people verbally or physically, and I remember one of my friends was with this alcoholic who was also a good friend of mine, and she said, well, he only, he only has a beer a day. Like that was okay. So she was living with him, she took him in to help him because she needed to have a relationship. That was how she identified herself. She needed to have a man in her life to foster her image of what she wanted and to have this kind of home life. And they were always alcoholics. She was always with these people because she had grown up with alcoholics. They had raised her. This was her comfort zone. So she didn't really know this level of good health. And then would tell herself a story, I'm helping him. And no, he only has a beer a day. He was a raging alcoholic with serious liver damage. You can't have a beer a day. That's not a healthy scene, I'll put it that way. And he could manage, but he couldn't manage because he would be drunk, and then it would lead to another beer, and then some beers that he didn't tell her about. And so I think that's really a codependent, where it's not a healthy situation. And we do it in many ways, right? So one thing you have to do is, it's about being honest. I think lessens a lot of anxiety and depression. And part of the honesty with ourselves can be hard to look at. You know, there are things about us that we don't really like, but there's also an amazing amount of stuff about us that's glorious. So, you know, my spiritual path has been that, yeah, I look at these things I don't like about myself, and sometimes it's, you know, I have a little wah-wah. But there's all these other good things I know. I don't want to discount, forget those. So, and the path is that things I don't like about myself have shifted a great deal, and they seem to be a lot less. Or they're smaller, or they're, you know, so I kind of find that significant. Rather than just harping on what I still don't do well, and what I still don't do right, and when a delusion gets really activated in me, rather than focusing on that, is just basic awareness. Let's just talk right now about basic awareness. But that's what I'd say about codependency. So part of it is you have to be honest with yourself, right? To say, like, he's an alcoholic and I'm letting him have a beer today. What was I thinking? Like, I know I don't want him to move out. Like, if I tell him he can't have a beer, this was her fear. If he can't have a beer, he may leave me. And I need him. That's codependency. I need something. Bodhicitta is, how can I help you? I really want you to be happy. How can I help you? And there's so many beings on the planet to help. You're always happy. Imagine that. I mean, it's not really our culture. Like, you know, the culture is take care of yourself. I'll give you an example of just something that always moved my mind now with service people. And many years ago, Lama Zopa Rinpoche came to visit. I was living in San Francisco at one of the centers, and there were just a few of us, like 5 or 6 of us. We decided to go out to an Indian restaurant for lunch in San Francisco, and we went, and the Indian man, the manager, was Indian. He recognized I wasn't a nun then, but Rinpoche was dressed as a monk, his attendants, and he immediately understood and recognized that these were Buddhist monks, and in India it's a very spiritual country. So even though he wasn't Buddhist, he had great respect for, and he somehow recognized Rinpoche as somebody great. So we sat down at the table. This was Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and we sat down, and normally when you sit down in a restaurant, right, what's your experience? They give you the menu, you order your food, and then what's your experience with the people you come with? You talk, that's right. You have a conversation, and you want to hang out with the people that you came to in the restaurant. You don't want the wait person hovering over you and kind of inserting themselves in the conversation. Generally not, you know, especially if we don't know them. And the thing is, Indians are very curious people. One of the more curious cultures I've ever been in, to the point where for Americans who are not that invasive of privacy, well, I'll put it this way, we see it as an invasion of privacy. But I learned a lot living in India for a while, and and I just realized they do it differently. And they find our culture kind of alienating. Okay? So it's just a different way of thinking. So he kept coming, after we ordered, and the food came, and he would come over to the table and he'd kind of stand by Rinpoche, you know. And I could see that, you know, first of all, everybody's like, yeah, everything's okay, thank you, you know. And then he would stand, and then he would say something to Rinpoche, and I could see some of us got a little annoyed with him. Like, okay, you know, thank you, you know, everything's fine. And part of us, you know, I think some people didn't want him to bother Rinpoche, but I could see Rinpoche had a completely different focus, was on this man. And what, you know, and how to bring happiness to this man, and Rinpoche was just delighted. We were just thinking about ourselves, what we thought the lunch should be. And the man and Rinpoche, and he started dialoguing, and he said, oh, and then Rinpoche was so, I kind of thought, like, that's it, so interesting, like, what about him? Like, there's no problem really talking to this person. He was a very nice man, very kind, and so that's what bodhisattvas are always extended out into what someone else needs. However, don't think that you're a doormat. This is an issue that people get into with bodhicitta. Oh, so should I take every homeless person in then that I pass? And does it mean that I empty my pockets when I see somebody on the street? Or should I bring them into a restaurant and have a meal with them? And what about my, cousin or my sister that's in a really bad way? And you have to understand boundaries of where you are right now. There's nothing wrong with setting boundaries. And lamas and highly realized beings, I've seen them do it all the time. They set boundaries. I've seen Rinpoche, there was a nun at a center who she was in a really bad way, a Western nun, and people were asking for various appointments, and she never got an appointment with Rinpoche, and I was like, why not, But he wouldn't give her an appointment. Obviously he saw for some reason no benefit, and he chose not to spend his time with her, and she had been, talking with him ages before, and he just said, she never got an appointment. Other people did. There were people that got an appointment that appeared to me not to so much really need an appointment. But I believed Rinpoche had the insight to know what was most beneficial. There's sometimes when we hosted Rinpoche at various centers, Rinpoche can be up all night, not sleeping, especially in the old days like that. But sometimes he wouldn't speak to anyone until 1 in the afternoon. So if you had a question or if you needed something about the schedule for the center and things, and he'd be doing his practice, basically setting up a good foundation for his day so he could best serve from 1 o'clock on. It wasn't that he wasn't helping people before 1. In his way, it was just a different way. And he basically, and you'd ask, his attendant, Venerable Roger, and he would just say, I can check that for you this afternoon, if you'd like, but Rinpoche's not really speaking right now. So I learned a lot about that. If boundaries are okay, it doesn't mean that you're not helping by setting a boundary. And especially with people we know, if it's an alcoholic, a substance abuser, in those situations, some people have adult children that are struggling, and they keep asking you for money, and they're coming home, and they're not, and there's some levels where it's okay sometimes to set a boundary. Again, you would use whatever wisdom and compassion you've developed in yourself, that's all you can do, and you do your best. And sometimes you make a mistake, right? And that's okay. So here's the thing about it being okay when you make a mistake. Okay, and for us, what we want to try to do is start to create the habit of acknowledging, I'm going to say this again and again, acknowledging the good stuff that we do, think, and say. We already have a wonderful habit established of acknowledging the bad stuff. That's deeply entrenched, right? So now I got to give airtime to the good stuff. I do, think, and say. Here's a little beginning. And I love this book by Sharon Salzberg, Loving Kindness. I highly recommend it. For people that suffer from anxiety and depression, I just love that book. And one of the things, I gave this example the other night, but Sharon was at a packing from a retreat. She had to leave early. I think somebody died in her family or somebody was ill, so she had to leave a retreat early that she was either leading or something, and she was packing in her room. And she knocked a bottle off the thing and it broke on the floor. And she immediately had this, like, you're so stupid. Right, do you ever do that? Yeah. I had my, I knocked the thing behind the thing today and I was like, oh. Right. Okay, it's just a habit that I do that. Now I have to reach back behind the thing and I didn't even see the thing there, so maybe it's rolled under. Now I'm going to have to, whatever. So what? It's just a thing. So she had a thing because she was practicing this loving kindness. She knocked the bottle, it broke, it spilled all over the floor, and she said, oh, you're so stupid, and I love you anyway. Right? We never add the and I love you at the end. Or she had and I still love you, or I love you anyway. We don't add that, it's just I'm stupid. Okay? So if you can start to introduce that always being there, that I care about myself. I knocked the bottle off the table, and I care about myself. And I'm good. I'm still good. Because all you did was you knocked a bottle off the table. Why does that change your Buddha nature? The fact that you're Buddha nature. So see if, for the rest of this weekend, if you have a moment like that, an irritation with yourself, you know, you're going to be driving home, right? Are you all, anybody walk here? Okay, great. Most of you drove. So, you know, driving in this area, we know what that's like. I've been driving. And I find you really have to focus here. People are going every which way. I mean, Geshe-la and I joked. We drove together yesterday. We went to... and first, Geshe-la was going to drive. And then Geshe-la said to me, maybe you should drive. And we went together, and I've been driving, you know, like most of you since my father taught me when I was 15, you know, close to getting my license. So he took me out in the old days in big parking lots of the supermarket. Because Sundays things were closed. Remember those days?
Yes.
Okay? I miss that. I really miss that. And I was in another country in the past couple of years where on Sundays everything was closed. And I was like, are we in a science fiction movie? You know, I'm like, what? You know, everything's closed. Like, because why? People get rest. People get rest. Now everybody goes to the store on Sunday. I really find that, I found that quite sad. But so the parking lots were empty on Sunday. A perfect driving place where you take your kid to learn how to drive. And so I said to, so normally when people drive when they're 16 years old, it's automatic, a lot of things that you drive. So Geshe-la and I went out, and then there were a couple little circles, little roundabouts, and I have to say to Geshe-la, oh wait, Geshe-la, let me just focus on which exit. And we got a little lost, you know, we were kind of out there, it was just so funny. Geshe-la kept saying, oh, it says make a U-turn or something, it was so funny. The two of us, it was just a trip, and it was easy, you know, we got there pretty quickly. But you have to pay attention. So what happens, there's a lot of annoyances when you drive, right? And you'll get annoyed with yourself and other people, and I love you, you know? Or put it into your own words, and I'm okay. I just made a mistake, and I'm okay. Why? Because as a human, it's okay to make a mistake, because that's the natural quality of being a human. So why do we deny that? So let me talk about Buddha nature and human nature, okay, to understand where delusion comes from. Buddha nature, in Buddhism they say every being with a mind has Buddha nature. And what that means, it's a seed or a potential that can ripen into a fully awakened or fully enlightened being, a Buddha. So why am I not a Buddha now? Because that potential, that seed, like this little glowing place in your heart, is obscured and covered over. Okay, like an onion, it's got layers of coating on it of delusion. What do I mean by delusion? I mean an unbalanced place in your mind. In Buddhism, the mind is said to be clear and knowing. It's not physical. It has no location in the body. It is, it tends to be, located, connected to a subtle energy system at the heart. But it's not physical. It has no shape or smell or color. You can't cut open the body and see the mind. But they say it's clear and it's knowing. It has a reflective quality. It reflects things back in these moments of awareness, you know, and it's aware of what it's reflecting back. Clear, spacious luminosity, that's the mind, that's your mind. And you're like, when I'm anxious? No, I don't think so. But what happens is that clear, spacious luminosity, due to our past activities, our karma, activities we did with our body, speech, and mind, they leave imprints in the consciousness. If they're negative imprints, it unbalances the clear, knowing, spacious luminosity and covers over with delusion, our Buddha nature. So spiritual practice is the process of peeling back the layers, completely purifying all those delusions until you're free and that Buddha nature shines forth and you automatically become a Buddha. So Buddha nature is considered perfect. It is omniscient, meaning all-knowing. It's free of all fears, clairvoyant. And because it's clairvoyant, and that level of mind can read other beings' minds, you know exactly the best thing to think, say, or do for them at any given moment. And then this is what's inconceivable about it, is you know what to think, say, or do for someone, and you respond from there every single moment, and for all minds everywhere in all world systems simultaneously. That's the Buddha mind. Pretty unbelievable. I can't really conceive of that. Okay, so that's great. We're on our way there. Okay, don't compare yourself with like, well, I'm not that, so I'm crap. No. Here's the counter thought. I'm on my way there. Thanks very much. You know, I make mistakes and I'm on my way. I'm trying. That's the best you can do. But what happens is pattern and habit say, well, that's kind of cool, but I'm crap. So we went to, I was at a meeting of our organization some years ago. Lama Zopa came, and there was a session, and before Rinpoche came in the room, the center directors were talking about how, you know, you kind of read things that Rinpoche does, and it's all unbelievably wonderful. And then there you are with your center, and this person doesn't like you, and the people didn't come to this class, and your center doesn't have any money, and you've got a full-time job separate. And out of the goodness of your heart, you wanted, to make a center in your living room or to help Kurukulla Center, whatever it was, because beings come here, people come, and they say that they get some help from it. So you said you'd help, and now you're miserable. And your husband's going to throw you out, and your kids never see you, and you're completely stressed all the time, and somehow you thought this was a good idea, right? So what happens is you'll get some things that would come through the organization that on this particular day it's really good to do these prayers right now or recite these sutras, but you're completely overwhelmed. You can't even introduce that into your consciousness. So we had this discussion about people who get these things based on what this highly realized person is doing, and then they have us, the unrealized, right? So it would make us feel like caca, okay, like crap, okay? So finally we were discussing, and Rinpoche came in the room, and then people presented it to Rinpoche, and then Rinpoche said, well, you just try your best. He said, that's all you can do. But like he just kind of simply, because what happens is somehow we feel like that's not good enough, but that's all you can do. Let's be realistic with ourselves. I'm very limited. So sometimes someone comes and there's some people, like right now, unfortunately our cook, we have a wonderful cook, Nina, at our center, our kitchen manager, and her mother's dying of cancer. Really awfully right now. It just, like, she was kind of going along and then things took a turn for the worse. You know how things like that just, it's horrible right now. She's in California, and we have to just figure out at the center what we have to do for cooking if Nina has to stay and whatever. And we've told her to just stay as long as she wants to stay, whatever's needed. But I just feel really helpless. Like, I wish I could help her mother. I've never met her mother, but I hate that Nina has to go through this and lose her mother being this young and what her family has to go through. And it's just horrible. I hate anybody has to go through that. But what can I do, right? So what I do is I try my best. I talk to her every other day. My little level of experience, because my mother passed away and what I had to deal with in a long thing in the hospital. And she said that's helpful, giving her ideas of what to ask and what to, a little list to make, and that's all. I can't, that's my best. That's the best I can show up with. So you have to ask yourself, are you showing up with your best? Are you trying your best? When we're not really trying our best a lot, it can contribute to depression and anxiety. If you're trying your best, there's some things you can't fix, so let it go. There's some things you can't fix yet about yourself, but again, I'm on the path. I'm trying. And were you a little lazy tonight, and I should have done that practice, but I really want to watch TV, or I should have come to the other session, but I kind of didn't really feel like doing it the whole weekend, and and you get down on yourself. It's like, that's the best you could do. We're all limited. I mean, I don't know your minds, but human nature, so that's human nature. Human nature is limited. It's unenlightened, imperfect. That's okay. So for me, that's realistic. That's where I am. So when I make a mistake, I accept and forgive. I'm not a Buddha yet, but am I trying my best? I try. Sometimes I feel kind of lazy. Sometimes I get overwhelmed with the work or so the mind also needs breaks in that period. So last night, he's not here right now. We finished the puja. It was really nice for Geshe-la's birthday, and there were a lot of people. It was very fun. Geshe-la was very happy, and then everybody left, and then it was me, Kunga, and Geshe-la in the house, and I smelled these wonderful smells coming from the kitchen, and I was about to make my own dinner here, and I walked in and I said, "Oh, delicious smells," and then Kunga said, "Oh, well, I made some food. Do you want to have some food with us?" He and Geshe-la. So, and Geshe-la enjoys if I'm in the house, we can eat something together. And he was in the living room with the TV on. So I said, "Sure, I'll join you." And I said, "Do you have enough?" And we sat down, the three of us. So of course, watching TV with Geshe-la is an experience. Okay? You have to buckle your seatbelt. Okay? And I know this, and we always joke, and Geshe-la says, "Yeah, Ania," she said, "used to give her a headache." Okay. But Geshe-la he's the captain, and he's got the remote in his hand. Okay. So he basically changes, and then when a commercial comes, he changes to something else. The ultimate of channel surfing, right? But what he was changing was between two action films, I'll say. And the thing is, I sat down, and I just felt like that's all I wanted to do right then. I was kind of tired. I've been working a lot during the day, and we sat, and the three of us enjoyed, and we really enjoyed, and we were talking and watching, and then I said to Geshe-la, at one film, he started to go on a long time with this other film, and I said, "Geshe-la, why don't we go back to the other one? Because I think it's at the end, and we're going to miss what happened. We're going to miss if he got the girl or not. Did he save the girl?" And we went back, and that was like, 15 minutes. I was happy. I just needed a little space, and I said to Geshe-la, "Yes, sometimes it's actually good," because he said a lot of lamas watch these violent action films if they come to the West. And I said, "Why?" Because it's such a break from their normal routine. Right? Sometimes you just want to completely space out, and for some people that's a way of entertaining themselves. Some people it's go for a walk outside, get physical exercise, listen to music, go to a movie, or read a novel. But I thought for 15 minutes people could say I'm wasting time. No, I just needed, I was going to eat dinner. That was just a way to do it. It was fun to hang out with them, and so give yourself some breaks as well, and then again, it's back on the cushion. I mean, as an analogy, back to being vigilant with my mind, being aware of what's arising. Okay, does that make sense? And I want to just say another word. This is a gentle process. This is a gentle process. Gentle is a huge word we have to use with ourselves. For people that I find are from the Northeast in the United States, I think, and I've lived in many places in the States and in some other countries, we are the most driven. Maybe it's us and the Japanese, right? But seriously, the Puritan work ethic came here from England. And in some ways, there's a detrimental side to it. There's a very powerful, positive side of it. And I appreciate it. And then there's a side where we grind ourselves, grind us right down. So work with gentleness. Be gentle how you work. Be gentle with yourself in your practice. You don't feel like practicing one day? Okay. Take a day off and start the next day. I know some people, Monday through Friday, they get up, have a regular meditation thing, and they take the weekend off. They want to sleep in, Fair enough. 5 days a week, they're very consistent. And there's a nice gentleness, balance, harmony with yourself in it. So you're not squeezing, pushing, where, some people have this idea, we talked about retreat the other night, meditation. It's rigid. It's not rigid, spiritual practice. It flows like the river. And you never know where the current will take you. And the more you try to resist the current, more miserable you'll be. Okay, so it's like, and what happens is when you wake up, and something you mentioned you wake up and, what was the word that you said, that you feel?
Me?
No, right there.
Me?
Yeah.
I forget what I said.
You felt,
Despair or something?
yeah, not
I
happy
never woke up.
in the morning, right? So there's a way that there's some days I notice, there's days you wake up and you notice the mind is tight. Like I'll wake up and I'll be like, this is not the day, and I'll keep talking about awareness, this is not the day that I need to have that difficult conversation with somebody because I'm not in a great mood right now. Right? That's what awareness is a benefit. It's a great benefit to for me, just starting to observe and saying, I'm feeling a little vulnerable today, so I think I'll wait and have that, if you can wait and have a conversation or do that particular project. Some days, you know how you wake up and you just feel bright? I feel rested, feel pretty good. That's a day you might engage in something because you feel more spacious. So the spiritual practice is a lot about getting to know our mind. So, and that comes from watching the mind. How do we watch the mind? Start a little meditation practice. Get quieter, stiller, like that. And that's the very beginning, is that awareness. So we're gonna take a short break. Let me just take some questions. If there are any questions, then we're gonna take a short break. We're gonna come back and I want to elaborate a little bit more on that. Yes. And what's your name?
Elizabeth?
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of self-insulting, but I don't even know if I need the microphone.
Okay, but there's,
Okay.
wait, there's a comment right there. So watch our language, okay? So Elizabeth's prefacing this with, this is self-insulting. This is a question, period. Right? Some people say to me, well, this is kind of a stupid question.
It's not stupid.
It's
really common. No, it may not be common. It's common to me.
Good.
I've been reading for a long time, and when I started doing Buddhism, and that was years ago after I read Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, I ran to Soga Rinpoche, and then the treaty had, and then I ran to Thich Nhat Hanh and Omega for a week, and then I even went down the following to Florida for the next week. I thought I was going to be a Buddhist, and they were different styles, they taught differently. And then it came to where I lived, and so I started working with that group. And I'm always rushing in, I'm always doing it, and then I get lazy.
Mm-hmm.
And that hasn't given up. I just keep thinking that I will not be lazy, I'm going to do it this time.
So one thing...
It's very hard, and it's been a long time.
Yes. So one thing, though, is that you keep coming back to something.
Okay.
So what about that?
Well, that's my only salvation.
Like you haven't, I have a feeling there's more salvation to you than that, right? Mm-hmm. That you're here, a living, breathing, thinking, intelligent person. The fact is you've been at it for all these years. You haven't left and dropped it.
I explore, but I always keep coming back.
Right, you always keep coming back. So what about that?
It's my holding.
I mean, I know people that explored, left, and never came back. No spiritual practice in their lives whatsoever. They have thoughts about it, but they don't go to any center, they've never picked up another book. I know people like that.
Well, I read too much, I probably don't do enough as far as going out and volunteering and helping others in my small ways, I can see it. And it's good to hear you saying that, because I feel like I'm being criticized.
Who's criticizing you?
I'm paranoid, and maybe the group I'm in. I don't know.
Okay, so part of that is also just a habit in your mind, that you might think people are criticizing you and that you're not good enough, like that. So here's, again, the exercise is, you keep showing up. I mean, telling yourself, I'm here, I'm in another course right now. You could be out there. You could be at IKEA today. Okay? Okay, talk about distraction, right? But you know what I'm saying? Honestly, you have to give yourself a word to yourself that, oh, I'm back here in another course now. That's a good thing, I'm saying. And actually find words to yourself to say that to yourself. I keep showing up. There's nothing wrong with shopping the Dharma for a while. Check out different teachers, especially I say that in the beginning, people. Check out different centers, different teachers. How do you relate to the students? Do they feel comfortable to you? Not comfortable. What do you think about the teacher? Does the teacher put into practice what they're teaching? Or do you think their behavior is something different? You know? I just told you mine's different because I'm out there watching action movies. But seriously, like, check it out. But what I would recommend is maybe now that you're saying this, if it bothers you, can you change it?
I'm trying.
You're trying. That's all you can do. But there's some things you can't change, then accept and let it go. But if you can change it, okay, maybe it's time to exert that little bit more effort to say, I want to go a little bit more deeply into one of them now. Like, I've been around enough, done the stuff, and now, I mean, you sit with a group, you said, it sounds like, right? How long have you been doing that?
Oh, they started about 7 years ago.
And you're still doing that? How often do you meet?
Not so much anymore, and there's a problem there that I can't go for a while.
Okay.
So,
But you're,
I'm
and do you live close to here?
in Gloucester, Cape Ann,
How far is that?
about 35 miles.
Okay. So do you, I mean, would you choose to come and do this, or to,
I could, but.
But you might not, okay.
I was an antique dealer and I was on the road all of my life.
Right.
I loved it and I was very busy. And this has really helped me, Buddhism, but now I'm doing therapy, which I rejected until I started reading about Mark Epstein, who involves Buddhism and therapy and Western psychology together, so I'm open to that. It's
Right.
helping. And,
what, do you have a
It's
little bit of a meditation
slowing
practice
down.
on your own?
yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you're not near a center and you have something going on your own, so what's the problem with that?
Nothing, it's just, it's less ritualistic, I mean, it's become less ritual, the group, you know, it's more like Vipassana meditation and.
Right? You don't need rituals to,
Well, I got guilty about that.
okay. So what guilt is a negative circling of the mind, that's all. And we are patterned about guilt based on our culture.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of us grew up with people making us feel guilty about various things, so it becomes a habit to feel guilty. So again, it's if you have a meditation practice going most days, regardless of what it is, there's this amazing foundation. So again, it's a little bit of finding the positive side in that, saying that to yourself. I'm at least trying to sit every day. Most of the world is not. I think that's fantastic. So it's a little bit of you layering that on you, you appreciating that, like spending some time in the morning, this drop of gratitude, really appreciate what you do have. Here's another layer of it, based on the life it sounds like you've had, which sounds quite interesting, is an alternative meditation on precious human rebirth. Instead of going through the 18 situations, I'm free from being an animal, what's it like being an animal? Is, why don't we just appreciate what we have? Okay, I went through this the other night. Relatively clean air and water, hello?
Right.
I've been in countries, I just came from countries. You couldn't drink the water out of the tap. And I got such an upper bronchial infection, it's still not gone because of the pollution. That's not here. You go outside to take a walk around the block, you don't come back and blow your nose and black comes out.
Right.
Really, these other countries, that's what it's like. So there's a situation that you have created for yourself, okay? And you've had successful business due to the level of intelligence. You have that, right? You probably had education. We all had access to free public education in this country for, what, 12 years? That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable. So there's some situations. The other thing is, I know in this area, you can go to the market and there's beautiful food there. Fresh food, a lot of it locally grown as we get into the next season, right? You probably get in bed every night in a warm, comfortable bed with shelter. I mean, why don't just take a little bit every day to appreciate that, to kind of counteract the constant, you know, we all have a little bit of a constant, I'm not good enough, it should be this, I'm that, you know, to just counteract that. I've done that a lot with myself. Is that possible, do you think?
I just went into a bookstore the other day and I have all these little books, like 365 quotations of Zen, you know, or 365 Buddhist quotation, or glimpse by Sogyal Rinpoche. And this one was 14,000 things that'll make you happy. And you open it up and there's lists you know, herbs in a little pot, the sun shining today, you know, putting your foot in a puddle. Really simple things. Then I had this idea that I was gonna like photostat or copy the book and give it to somebody. It's just a little book for 14,000, you need 14,000 things, but it was cute.
Right?
So
But what I just said to you, is it possible to appreciate those basic things
Oh, yeah.
and on a regular basis? Because I think that's what, again, appreciating those things, that's the thing that cuts the other habits. And you have to make some effort in it. I can't do it for you,
Right.
but you can do it.
I don't want to look at things as chores, even when I'm going to be doing my taxes this week, you know, I don't want that to be a chore, I don't want to miss a minute, you know, so how do you convert that?
You don't want to miss a minute of what?
Enjoying something.
Enjoy.
That.
Well, on a practical level, this is samsara. Okay, no really, do you know what samsara is? Sanskrit word, to cycle. What are we cycling through? Birth, old age, sickness, and death. Okay? What's the problem with that? It's all suffering. It's all suffering. I mean, I'm not going to say birth isn't amazing. It is, but a lot of suffering. Okay? Birth, old age, sickness, death. There's all suffering. That's its nature. There's taxes to do. Right? So practically, I mean, you can keep resisting stuff like that. Again, this is the river. So you can keep rushing against the current, but you just got to do the taxes. It's just part of life, you know. Your car gets dinged in a parking lot. Samsara. So you can choose to be miserable or you can choose not to be miserable. So somebody in my life close to me recently went through a thing with an occasion, a family occasion, happens every year, and every year there's strife in the family. She gets upset, you know, and I said, you know, this is coming every year. So you have two choices. You can be miserable or not be miserable. What would you prefer? And a lot of people choose misery, right? We hang on, we're clutching on, and it's habitual. It's habitual. But it doesn't always have to be that way. So the beginning is the awareness, well, I'm kind of like this, or I suffer from guilt, I suffer from depression, or I feel this, or just being aware, and then figuring out, a lot of us in this room have a lot of tools already. You've probably got a lot of tools of, that's okay, that's great. And now it's just a little fine-tuning, and you'll be so much happier. And I know it takes effort. I know it takes tremendous effort. You're not alone. You're not alone, but it sounds like you're doing great so far. And maybe it is just a little fine-tuning.
But I want to give it away too, and I can't decide how to do that.
You want to give what away?
My happiness would do something for more than just one person at a time. Like,
Right.
so I have these ideas, and I sort of come and go.
Right?
I closed my store, but I have the space, it's available, it's on a main street, and I could probably do a spiritual or meditation thing, just a drop in, but can I commit? So, you know, I have to.
Well, maybe simplify as well. I find that we get all these, like I run this center in Vermont, Milarepa Center. I hope you can actually come visit at some point. It's a great center, it's about 3 hours from here, and it's beautiful, and we have the newsletter is out there on the outside. So I am constantly full of ideas, and sometimes drive myself crazy and everyone around me with, because I'm a limited person, and we have a very small staff, and so, you know, this is my year, and actually started last year. There's things that came up, and I just said, we can't do that. You know, it hurts me sometimes we can't do it, but now realistically I'm like, we can have some space, we can have a free weekend. We don't need to have something that weekend. We can't do it. Or we could do it and schedule that teacher who wanted to come in the off-season when there will be no tent up, they're going to have a lot of people, we're going to be jammed into the gompa, won't be able to have everybody here, we won't have time to get ready, so we could book that and all be stressed out, and it won't be the greatest program. Why do that? So now I just say, can't do it. Would like to do it. So maybe keep it simple, where just have one idea, and maybe it's that you start and volunteer for somebody else for a little bit, like go to the library a couple times a week, or anything in your area. I don't know what is there, but there's other places. Come down here once a month. They can use help. They could use help here. We can use a lot of help, right? But what I'm saying is just try something simple, and then through that you meet other people and you start, and somebody else says, well, I'd be interested in helping you with a center. I think it's, you know, and then suddenly, so it's just, I think keep it simple. We get all these ideas and it weights us down a little bit. Maybe keep it simple, you know. And if the store becomes a thing, maybe sell it or rent it out then to something else, totally, where you don't have to be managing something. Something like that. If it's something that bogs you down, I would see if it's possible to shift a little bit. So let's take a break, and then we'll have time for more questions. I just want you to have a little bit of a break. And so you're going to take about 5 minutes. And again, in this 5-minute period, I want you to notice, does your mind get activated? So don't blah, blah, blah. Let's take a silent 5-minute break. Notice if you start activating the negative, oh, she said this, I can't do that, I'm worthless. And then I want you to have a counter thought. Positive counter thought. Something good you think, say, or do, or some direct positive counter thought about you that you do something good like that. Okay? 5 minutes. So, I want to talk about, oops. This thing is really sophisticated.
Yeah.
Okay. Any comments or things you notice at the break? As far as anything come up that you needed to counter? Did you try it? Any experience?
I knocked over a jar and everything went flying and I laughed.
Great. Great. How did that feel?
Felt good. Felt like it showed me that I'm in a better place than I think I am.
It's good. Do you remember, we talked about this the other night, do you remember when we were kids in school and someone would drop a tray in the cafeteria and everybody would clap?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, it's a little bit of going back to that. Now, some people would clap to embarrass someone, but sometimes it was just like we'd laugh. So somehow then we grew up and we got serious about dropping things. And then we're going to grow up and get even older and we're going to be dropping a lot of things. So I think if you can't laugh with that as its natural course of life, things get really sullen. And stuff happens, we knock stuff over. Rarely does it happen intentionally. So what's the big deal? Anything can be mopped up and cleaned up, and rarely is there something really irreplaceable like that. So I think that's great. That's the, and I love you. I love you, I dropped this, and you might have the little thought, I'm stupid, and I'm okay. And then eventually the I'm stupid goes away. Eventually you do enough practice and that doesn't come up anymore. That's where we're trying to go, but because there's a lot of habits, it still comes up. Other experiences?
I have one that causes me embarrassment all the time, and self-criticism. And it's that I find things to criticize about other people in my mind.
Right?
And so this happened during the break. And I tried one thing, which was to think of at least one person who I thought well of today in the room. And while that gave me a very peaceful, wonderful feeling, what I would like to do is to be able to find something nice about the person I was criticizing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure how that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. So she's the only one in the room here that has this problem, right? Right? Okay. So the first thing is you're not alone. This is really common. And rather than trying to, like, one great antidote is to try to find a positive thing about the person. But even to take it back a step is, why do I feel this need to criticize? Is to try to disengage it there. So a nice step is to find that positive thing about them. And the other thing I noticed is, from having a very critical mind myself, negatively critical, is I signed up in this life because I do believe karma, so I am at the helm of it, and I'm not going to blame someone else because I'm negatively critical, or have been. But I realized I signed up and kind of made a contract and came back to be raised around extremely negatively critical people. So again, I'm not blaming them, I'm just saying I have a tremendous influence in my life of that. So it naturally causes you to complain and be critical. So my beginning was awareness of that, of like, oh, look at that, like, this came from that, from previous experiences, and a lot of experiences of that, of behavior that this was condoned, and this is the way you are, and then I start being aware in my own mind when I'm doing it, and then I also started to be aware of how it upset other people around me when I would actually air it and say it, and then acknowledging my responsibility in it. You know, this was just from previous patterns of that, and you know. So one thing I notice is if you can just become aware of that, and it didn't sound like you said anything verbally, right? You just had it in your mind. And so initially was my awareness and like, you know, I'm doing the best I can do right now, and I can't counter this first off, other than presenting a positive thing about the person. It's a fantastic thing to do. But just noticing that mind that does that, and being okay with and saying, it's okay, I'm working on this. I also did a lot of purification practice around it, Vajrasattva specifically.
I don't know what that is.
Okay, so Vajrasattva is a practice you can learn here. We might even try some here, I think, this afternoon. It's a brilliant way to purify depression and anxiety. It's sometimes the only thing you can do. It's visualizing a deity and doing a certain practice with a mantra like that. So I think it would be really great, because it gives you something to do on another vein of, I can't change the pattern right now, I'm still doing it, and just try from there. So it takes time. And slowly the pattern would start to shift. And I'd realize I don't really need that in my mind anymore. It's not that beneficial. So another antidote is rejoicing. And I have never been a natural rejoicer. From being raised with very negatively critical people, there was always a problem, and there was always some little... And so rejoicing means when whatever you saw about this person that caused you to criticize is before that thing is thinking, well, they're here like I am, and they're working on stuff. Like noticing the critical mind come up, and then just immediately, no, they're here just like me, and you hear them say something, oh, isn't that wonderful that they thought that kind of thing? I would never have thought of that, but they're focused in that way, being happy for them. So it took me many, many patterns of forcing the rejoicing. Really, like, I'd hear something good happen for someone, and I'd be like, how wonderful. You know, initially, but I practiced it. And actually now I have normal things that come up where I go, oh, great. How great. When normally I wouldn't have said that. I would have been critical and, you know. The other things, another way that I've gotten at it is thinking, if I start to notice the thought about the person, really ungenerous thought or something, and the negative criticism, is then I think, have I ever done that or been that way? Of what they're, like, everybody's a mirror, right? For me, I can learn something from everybody. So there's many mirrors out there constantly. And some of the mirrors are something really pleasant, where you're kind of like, oh, I do that too, that's nice. Like, yeah, she's kind of mirroring that aspect of myself. And then there's the negative ones that we don't like to see. But it's often something about myself that it's showing back to me. Do you think so sometimes?
As I'm listening to you speak, I think for myself, where I am right now, it's more about forgiveness that I've been that way.
Right. So often it can come from there as well. That I have this and I've done this, and I don't accept it in myself. And I haven't forgiven it. If you can't accept it, you can't forgive it. And then what happens is it just keeps getting mirrored and mirrored and mirrored back to you, like that. So gentle. Gentle. It's like, I watch it, and there's many times I watched it and didn't like it, and was like, but at least now you're aware. Now you're aware. That's fun. I mean, have some rejoicing. I just think it's very significant, the awareness in the beginning. It's a huge step. And most of us, I think for Americans, we want to see something really big, a really big shift in realization. But that's not how a lot of realizations come. They're the small steps along the way of, well, I noticed I was getting really angry. That's a huge step. Because look at the rest of the world. It's completely unconscious about anger, depression, jealousy, anxiety. Like, it just motors through these things, and this is how it feels it's a constant. never to be changed. You know? And some people thinking it's beneficial to get angry in certain circumstances, right? Or to feel really attached or something. So that's a huge step. So I would just keep working on it. And then there's also the conspiracy theory. I'm a proponent of this, believer in the conspiracy theory. I don't know about you, but I've mentioned this before. This is my conspiracy theory. Everyone is trying to get me enlightened. So seriously, you know, particularly those most challenging to me, thank you. You know, you're giving me a lesson, you're showing me my mind, because if my mind was perfect and free, I wouldn't be having any problem with you right now. So we actually need those conflictive situations to practice patience, generosity, effort, ethical discipline, you know, to see our minds and to see where we have to do the work.
So I think what changed in me is that I've noticed this about myself pretty much all my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would get tired of that part of me. And as you said, not accepting that I'm that way,
Mm-hmm.
and not being able to forgive myself. But what just shifted is that I was continually thinking about how about the other person. I don't want to feel that way about that other person. Whereas I heard you suggest that it's about me. It's about thinking about forgiving myself.
Yeah.
So
So,
it's a change in focus
Yeah.
towards forgiveness rather than trying to think differently about someone else.
about the external. So you said a couple really significant things. Is the first thing you said, I'm kind of sick of this pattern. You know, tired you said I'm tired, I think, that I'm still this way and that I have this. So that's renunciation. And that's the first principle of the path. It's a huge place. Meaning, renunciation, literally, is when you strive day and night to get out of your suffering. You know, to achieve Buddhahood or to help others, but you strive day and night. So you might say, well, I'm not really doing that. But the beginning of it is having compassion for yourself. Meaning, when you have a pattern going on for so long, and I've reached places where I just said, I can't do this anymore. I am so unhealthy in this pattern. I just can't do it anymore. That's a huge, significant place to be. Most people don't get to that place on the planet, and they're just swimming through it again. Here I go again, through whatever. So to get to a place where you just said, I'm so tired of this, is a big step. And then the other thing is being a Buddhist actually means being an inner being. And it means that I am not obsessively focused negatively on myself, but when something arises that interferes with my agenda and makes me suffer, and it can be minor suffering of an irritation to something major, I'm looking inward and what's my place in this and my responsibility. So that's where I was saying, am I accepting that I'm like this and forgiving myself for these moments that come up? Why did they come up? Just from a previous experience of that. Can you make new habits? Absolutely, but the beginning is the awareness, and then starting the acceptance and forgiveness. And see if some things start to change a little bit. So yes?
I was just thinking, is once you move a pattern because it's been ancient, you might have to feel something along the way. That pattern is just hanging on
Mhm.
over a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of feelings attached to that pattern.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? Because I know sometimes I do gigantic patterns and I got deathly sick. It was okay, I accepted that.
Right,
But it pushed me another further out.
right. But you had patterns that were making you sick, you said.
Once I broke the pattern.
Once you broke the pattern, you got sick. Okay.
I was getting close to it,
You were getting close to,
to the pattern, of breaking the pattern.
okay,
The pattern still wanted to hang on. to
yes,
it, and I kept on pushing forward.
right. Moving to a healthy pattern,
Right.
you're saying, okay. So part of,
Thinking through it.
yes, so part of it, thank you, is we talk about the Lam Rim in our tradition. The Lam Rim is our basic philosophy, okay? And Lam Rim means path, and rim means steps or stages. Okay, so this is gradual. Steps and stages are gradual. It's not like leap to enlightenment, you know. It's not the path of leaping. It's the path of steps and stages. So in the process of our transformation and I'd say further evolution into something healthier and maybe fully awake, is I think you have to go at your own pace. Everyone has a different path to the top of the mountain. So it's very important to look at finding meaning in life, and I know that's difficult for some people, but then finding my path to that meaning. You know, and what happens in our culture, we're very competitive. So we measure ourselves up against somebody else. You know, well, she's a nun already, so I guess, you know, she'll get enlightened in this life, but I won't. It's just not true. Like I said, many great lay practitioners and many monks and nuns that blow it all the time. You know, I'm not a holy person at all. I make lots of mistakes and have a pretty ordinary mind. So I think with the patterns, you have to see how quickly you're moving to change it and how not, and do you have the proper support in your life, depending on what pattern you're trying to change. But sometimes in the changing, it's a type of purification, so things are going to come up. Things are going to get access, and sometimes it makes people sick. But usually this isn't a path that makes you sick, it makes you healthier. So I think it would be something like that, of gently, gently, right? Does that make sense? I'm asking.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, who asked the question, or-
Makes sense.
Does that speak
I
to
do
it?
public speaking, I never used to shake. Now I get to the point is when I talk, I shake.
Right,
And I accept that, because I know there's a level there is something else is looking, I'm looking on the other side of that.
uh-huh,
You know. Now what I'm doing is I need to cry a lot. I'm not there yet,
Mhm.
because there's other patterns that have stopped me from doing that.
right.
You know, embarrassment, humiliation, and all that.
And the shaking could be unrelated. It could be from another karma ripening that has nothing to do with this particular thing. Karma is very intricate to understand. So it doesn't mean that necessarily this one thing I'm changing is causing this other thing. Like that. Like that. I have heard, even though this is a medical thing, I'm not a big advocate of alcohol and things, but my father has that as well, shaking. And apparently his doctor said like a glass of red wine every night apparently really eliminates that. So I don't know, that's just a, you know, general something. I don't know, my father's found that can be helpful with that. And he's not much of a drinker or anything, so. So I don't know if that addressed what you were asking?
Yeah, it did.
A little bit? Okay. So one thing I want to talk about is distraction and technology. We were talking about this a little bit. And I was reading this article that I loved. And Margaret Wheatley is a great, I don't know if you've heard of her. She's interested in Buddhism, or maybe practicing Buddhist, but she's a business person who does a lot of public speaking about kind of enlightened leadership. And I like her stuff. And one thing started to equate the Titanic, the situation everybody knows about the ship that sunk. And she said the reason it sunk was because of distraction. And so what happened is, she was saying that when they were notified and there were icebergs all over that area and they were told, but they didn't slow down the ship, which they could have, where they could have seen and then steered it better. And there were different alerts where they were called by somebody about there's icebergs all out there, and one of the guys just said, I don't have time, I'm too busy to avoid it. So here's a quote from Rumi, the poet Rumi, okay? Sit down and be quiet. You are drunk, and this is the edge of the roof. Okay, so let's just think about that in our lives, okay? With depression and anxiety, okay, it's like we are drunk and at the edge of the roof, and we feel like that. We're going to go over the edge. You know, somebody even said it in here, that I feel like I'm going over a cliff. Somebody just said that. So, again, sit down and be quiet. Sit down and be quiet. And sometimes that means looking at yourself and seeing things arise that you do not like. That's a lot of the beginning of waking up. Okay, that's what the Buddha did. The Buddha in his last life, okay, he had many previous lives where he put in a great deal of effort. It wasn't that he, turned up as Prince Siddhartha, went off and spent 7 years and boom, enlightened. Many, many years. And there's beautiful stories, the Jataka tales of the previous life stories of the Buddha, And some of the stories, they're extraordinary. Well, before those stories, there were stories when he was ordinary, like us. So I find that actually inspiring that he at one time was also ordinary and suffered from all the delusions that I suffer from. And one time I was at a teaching with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Here's a present day person that I find incredibly inspiring. And he said one time, sometimes His Holiness gives you a little insight into his realizations, a little bit, Usually the Tibetans, they never speak about their realizations. And he said, I had a memory once, like a vision, an insight, that I was a poor Indian, and I attended one of the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha, when the Buddha was giving a discourse, and he says, I was all the way at the back of a mass of people as a poor Indian there. And I thought, okay, well now he's the Dalai Lama? That was only 2,500 years. We might say, well, that's a really long time, but that's not very long when you think about the whole cosmos and eons and things like that. So why don't we think a little bit in bigger terms of many lifetimes ahead, many investments forward. And right now, I'm just trying to evolve a little bit more fully. Each life a little bit more fully. And even in this life, if I can just every year, some of you have been around. How long have you been around?
70, almost
This tradition?
75 years. Oh, in this
tradition.
tradition, since I was 50, and I'm like 24 years.
Okay, so 24 years. And Wendy, about
Maybe
10 years. How many people? A year? 2 years, some of you?
Yeah.
Okay, a year. What's your name?
Bill.
Bill? So if you look back a year, Bill, any change for the
Yeah,
positive?
Yeah. Positive, yeah.
Positive change in a year.
Positive change.
1 year, okay?
More patience.
Fantastic. Fantastic, okay? So what I'm saying is, we want to see a leap. We want to see something really big. That's not the way it works. But these people, if you look back a year, and when you started your first year, I could say for myself, my first year, when I looked back after 5 years, there were changes. Right? There were changes, right? Changes, yeah?
I see a lot of changes.
Yeah, and that's significant. So I think we have to give ourselves that permission to, chart that course rather than, if you're just charting it in this life. But also if you do believe in reincarnation and want to look ahead, this takes time. So the Buddha had these stories, and what happened is he turned up as Siddhartha, Prince Siddhartha, the story that we know the most of the Buddha's life this time round, 2,600 years ago, 2,500 years ago. And he got to a place where he was upset with what he saw. And he was upset a little bit with his role in it, the suffering that he saw. Okay? So that's what happens, is sit down and be quiet. And the reason we do that is to start to have a look at your mind. Look at the depression. Look at the anxiety. You can't fix it until you've had a good look at it. Until you get in there, and then you start to analyze. That's another level that we do. Let me just go on a little bit about the sit down and be quiet. Can I do that? Okay? There's another quote I wanted to mention. Okay, so the internet. Let's think about the internet. Some of our technology. We've got phones, computers. Some of you in here may not use them at all, but most people now are on them, sometime or other. It's going. Sometimes our cars have them now. Okay? Then you've got your TV that has its dimension of stuff going on. So let's just think about all this. So I want to just take you back a little bit in time. And I'm just going to take you back, for those of you that remember, pre-cell phones, pre-mobile phones of any kind. Okay? So when you got in your car, I actually found that a delighted moment. If I had a long drive, I was just driving in my car. Now I might be listening to the radio, and I might have a cassette in or something, but that's all I was doing. It wasn't the vibration going off and you get distracted. That's why people have accidents. I know they had accidents before that, Okay, a lot of those accidents, how many of them come from distraction? Mostly it's distraction. Took your picture off the thing for a second and boom. Got distracted, dropped something on the floor, spilled my coffee, you know. Sneezing, right? Distraction, okay? So let's look at how does distraction play in our lives that can contribute to depression and anxiety. If I sit down and be quiet, and what happens for a lot of people is they want to have some kind of spiritual practice. Right? But because you keep stopping the sitting down and being quiet, you start to feel guilty. I should have done it, but it's much easier to reach for the remote control and, you know. So sitting down and being quiet. So what happens in the internet and this thing with the phone and da-da-da is I am everywhere instead of here at every given moment, okay? So one guy in this magazine, I was reading this article, says to be everywhere is to be nowhere. Right? So just think about that. How many little clicks of the computer send you into some other thing, and the next thing you know, all you did was you were looking to buy, one rain jacket. And now you're off with these, new wallpaper for the house from some great thing. And I got it because it was on sale. How many times okay, so again, we are full of stuff. Every moment, there's just a constant, the mind is just racing faster and faster now because of the technology. And so now you put these boxes in our lives, these phones, and I'm just amazed, and I'm amazed at how sometimes people get angry at me because I don't answer my phone. Yeah. I have the phone turned off sometimes, and they get upset because and I'm like, well, I was off this afternoon, I'm not answering the phone, but it's a responsibility, you need to, they'll say. Why? And they'll say, because I needed to reach you. So think about that if you put that on someone else. Now granted there's emergencies, okay, but in emergencies prior to the cell phone, somehow we got the information. We might have gotten it a little later, but we still got the information. And so think about it. I have technology holidays, computer holidays. I don't open the lid of the laptop, and days I don't turn the phone on. And there's a lot of space. Because somebody vibrates, and then what happens is you go over to it, and maybe you're not going to answer the phone for that person, but then there's a habit already of what you do on your phone in the morning. Some of you, if you have a smartphone, I get a lot of information from my phone. I get my news on my phone. But there's times when I go, no, you know what? I'm not going to turn it on. And so see if you can start, again, the patterns. You got a habit and a pattern of using the technology. I know there's benefits to using it, I know that. My favorite is depositing my checks by my phone now, because the bank I have is in California, right? But again, the rehabituating yourself to life where it is silent so I can sit down and be quiet. Why? Because I don't want to fall off the roof. And when you're spinning out of control with anxiety and depression, we sometimes respond from a negative place and hurt others and hurt ourselves. So I'm not interested in falling off the roof here. So here's what I wanted to talk about is some practices of, and Master Shantideva says this, okay. The only antidote, this is not Master Shantideva, the only antidote to our culture of interruption, and I would call it interruption technologies, right? Interruption technology, is for us to take back control of ourselves. Okay, you will feel empowered, and it does lessen anxiety and depression. You can't stop what's going on out there in the world. You can't stop it. They're not going to undo the internet and make it not available. Okay, that's unrealistic. Okay? You can't stop the capacity destroying dynamics of distraction or this, what I would call techno speed of life. Okay, we can't stop that, but we can change our own behavior. This is again, being an inner being. We can change our own behavior. So here's Master Shantideva. The affairs of the world are endless. They only end when we stop them. Okay. And it's interesting to kind of think, Master Shantideva, 8th century. So I think sometimes, well, how distracting could it have been in the 8th century, right? But it was. For the 8th century, they had their level of distractions. Just like each century we live through gets more and more sophisticated. Okay? Okay? But again, the affairs of the world are endless. They only end when we stop them. Okay? So here's the thing. To restore good human capacities, and so let me label some of them. Thinking, meaning making, what makes meaning, okay? Being discerning. You need to develop discipline. I know that's a hard word for people, discipline. Okay. This is also called joyous effort. Joyous effort is a type of discipline. Okay. And it's very hard for us. However, we're very disciplined about our work for the most part. We're disciplined about sometimes when we're slaves to our technology. We're disciplined sometimes about our hygiene habits, about how we might eat or how we might exercise. We know a certain discipline in our lives. What happens is our minds fall to the bottom of the heap. We're not so disciplined with our minds. And this is the most worthwhile thing that will make you the happiest, is when you're disciplining your mind, okay? Okay, so here's the thing. We need to be mindful of distraction and disciplined enough to shut off the technology. Shut off the computer, put the phone down, and make time for casual conversations, to sit patiently. And here's another one, to listen. And doing all of this, okay, meaning casual conversations, sitting patiently, listening, okay, without getting anxious that we're wasting time. Okay, that you won't get through your to-do list, that we're missing out on something. Okay, so for the real anxiety makers in this room, some of you had more of a depression thing, some have more anxiety, right? For the anxiety people in this room, the people that get really stressed, do you think that's possible for you to start putting that into your lives? Okay, let me say that again. Can you shut off the technology, shut off the computer, put the phone down, things like that, to make time for casual conversations, to sit patiently, to listen, without getting anxious that you're wasting time, you're not getting through your list, and you're missing out on something. Think about how you could put that into use in your life today. Don't wait, but just incorporate a little bit of it. What if I just turn my phone off for 10 minutes? What if I don't turn my phone on the first thing in the morning? Did you ever turn it on in the morning and then it's like, it starts with all its messages or texts or something? Not everybody has smartphones, but other phones. What if you you have your morning time to go at your pace, right? These are simple things. This is not any major, mysterious, tantric initiated thing. It's just because I've noticed also, people turn up at our center, particularly in the summer, they stop by. Sometimes it's a neighbor. Now granted, sometimes I'm in the middle of something, but you can certainly have 10 minutes. And it's kind of nice face-to-face to hang out with somebody. The lunch you wanted to have with a friend, and you put it, how long has it been now? 3 months you've been trying to schedule? You ever have that? This is busy city people. Some just basic conversation with your partner at home, your spouse at home. I've seen people in households barely able to interconnect, barely able to have one 10-minute eating thing together. It's kind of out the door, and did you ever just stop? I know my sister has a rule with her kids: no cell phones at the table, at the dinner table. Never, And the other day I saw her son. She was in visiting, so her son, and she said, "It's rude. Put that down." So they have a habit now that the kids know not to come to the table with the phone. I mean, her kids are grown now, but they're not when they eat with her. And it is. You think about. So, how do you eat your meals? Do you eat your meals like that? Is everybody jumping up and running around, or what kinds of now? Granted, you can't control these other people in your lives, but you can set an example. quietly going, the pace. Now granted, a lot of things spin out, but I've noticed I've slowed some things down in my life, even when I was living in really frantically busy places with busy things. And just my little time for meditation in the morning made a whole bit of difference in my day. I came in balanced, happy. Sometimes it wasn't very long, sometimes it was 10 minutes. But I got my motivation. I appreciated the situation I had that day. Even if I was in a bad mood, I still had a pretty good scene. I wasn't dodging bullets to get to work. I had a job. I was a thinking, whole person. So I had that little motivation, how I wanted the day to go. I wanted to make meaning. I wanted to focus my activities on helping others. Really appreciated what I had. And from there, and had this little bit on the focus on the breath. Why did I want to focus on the breath? A little concentration. It kept me more focused in the day. A little bit of mindfulness in the day. So when I had the mindfulness, then, and I find more and more now, I'm less forgetful. Like, where did I put my glasses? Where did I put the keys? And what happens is when you lose things like that, that contributes to stress. I'm not talking about the deep-seated, like constantly anxious, overly anxious thing, but I can't find that. Where did I put? I have to look for that now. I gotta go. I gotta look for that. So it's like if your mind was there when you put it down, if your mind was full of the present moment, then I would exactly remember where I put that stuff because my mind was there when I put it down. So of course you know where it is. What happened is my mind was distracted over here when I put the keys down. So I have no recollection. So here are three ways to practice, to try to work on being quiet and sitting down. Sit down and be quiet so that we don't fall off the roof in our delusional state, okay? Just notice your behavior. Basic awareness, I mentioned. Just start to notice. I can't control it right now, but I'm just noticing. Just noticing, I'm feeling full of anxiety right now, or I'm feeling severely sad and depressed. Okay? Okay, here's the second thing. This is the hard part. Try something different. Try something different. We have deep entrenched patterns of how we were doing it. So I mentioned this week earlier, a lot of us cross-country ski. There's groomed cross-country ski trails. You've been hiking in the woods, and when there's a path, it's really nice, easy, rather than cutting through the brambles. Spiritual practice is cutting through the brambles, breaking trail. That's the doing something different. I decide, and I'm sorry, what's your name right there?
Karen.
Karen. So Karen said, I'm tired of this. Fantastic. I salute you, right? I'm tired of this. You're on a nice little groomed cross-country ski trail. We have them in Vermont. Sometimes I find them boring. I've been this route before. I've seen this. A million times I've seen this. Same track, through the woods, there I do something different. I think I'm going to go over here and see what's behind this mountain. It's unknown. It can be terrifying. I've never done this before. It's hard work. Breaking trail, it's hard work. Okay? That's the discipline you need to try something different. Okay? So your example, wow, I see my mind going, I'm really, really critical of this person. And one great thing was, I'm sure I can find some good qualities about them. Let me think about that right now. That's trying something different. Maybe, Elizabeth, I've got too many things. I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do that. And I'm doing this, and I'm doing this. Maybe trying something different is sticking with something, with one of the groups, and going a little deeper. It's almost like maybe bolting yourself to the ground in the group and saying, I've got to do this. This is different for me. Number 3, then commit yourself to practicing the new behavior until it becomes natural. Here's the significance about it. It says, you commit to practicing that new behavior until it becomes, you have to make a commitment to yourself. And I know we don't like those words. It sounds like a heavy word, that kind of discipline. But I find it very different for me to sit down and let's say I might try in the morning, depends what kind of time, 10 minutes of concentration meditation, shine. Well, sometimes at the beginning of shine, the best thing is to have a determination. Right now, I'm working on my concentration meditation. I'm not doing any other kind of meditation, and I'm not doing anything else right now. I'm not answering my phone. I'm not doing emails. I'm not dealing with the staff. I'm working on meditation, on shine right now. This is what I'm doing. It sets up a much better way for my meditation by making that determination. That for the next 10 minutes or the next 15 minutes, I'm going to keep my mind focused on this object, the object I selected for meditation, and that's what I'm doing. So this is a commitment to your own thing, is I commit that, and you can even say it out loud, you can write a note of an affirmation, you know, put it next to your bed or in the bathroom, on the bathroom mirror or something, that basically I'm committing to blank. You know, I'm committing to finding something positive in whomever it is that I'm criticizing, that I notice a negative criticism comes up. I know that I'm committing to staying with one of the groups now that I'm studying, to staying with this study practice. Some kind of new behavior. Possible?
Yes.
Okay. Again, slowly, slowly. But not too slowly, right? One of my teachers said. So again, this is kind of radical. It is radical. Spiritual practice anymore, to become a bodhisattva warrior is radical. You're not going to war with anybody, and you're certainly not going to war with yourself. You're just going to war with the delusions that keep you in prison, that keep you anxious and depressed. And again, it's noticing, awareness. You try something different, and you commit to practicing that new behavior until it becomes natural. It's actually very simple, but I know it takes a great deal of effort. It's totally possible for every person in this room to try that. But you try, and what's going to happen is sometimes you're going to fall flat on your face, meaning you're aware that you're criticizing somebody, or you know, and then the next moment I can't do anything new, and I'm just criticizing. You know, fair enough. You know, you have to just keep trying over and over again. That's why we call it practice. That's why we call it practice. Okay, so when that comes up and I can't do the new thing yet, and there goes my mind off down this thing, then I'm like, you know what? I'm trying my best. I can't really do it right now. I accept that. Why? Because I'm a human being. I'm not a Buddha yet, but I'm trying. I'm on the path. I'm on the path. You showed up here, you're on the path. You know, so it means I'm interested, I'm trying, I'm tired enough of some behavior, I want to get some ideas and some techniques. That's huge. So I'm trying, and maybe at least I'm aware, and I'm going to commit to trying a little bit harder the next time. It's the best we can do sometimes. So why is that not okay? If that's the best you can do, you can't do any more. So I'm often asking myself, is there something I can do? Then I'll do it, and if that's the best I can do, let it go. So it does take that little bit of effort if you know that you're not doing your best and there's something more. That's where we get snagged. The guilt comes up and... But I have found, and some of you know, are any of you procrastinators in here? Okay? Well, I'm famous for it. I'm better about it now, but oh my God, at university it was horrible. The last minute, the final last minute I'd write the paper, you know, all night. Remember electric typewriters?
Yes.
You know, remember those days? I mean, and the little whiteout strips. Oh my God, what a nightmare. I look at my niece and nephew and their computers and I was just like, geez, how many revisions could you do on that? Whole paragraphs around. You know, I had to be typing, the paper, you'd mess it up. Right? So, I used to procrastinate, and what happens is I found, with stuff like this, with your mind, when you procrastinate and you put it off, you don't feel that great about yourself. So at least notice that when I don't do this, I don't feel good about myself. So why don't you try the new pattern? Just do it one time. You're going to notice you feel great. Maybe the next time you get lazy again and you don't do it, but then the next time say, I'll do it. Maybe you do it every other time. That's every other time more than you're doing it now when you feel guilty, right? Okay? So just try your best. Maybe one quick question, then we're going to take a break for lunch? Yes?
One of the things that I've noticed is I'm thankfully through a long period of chronic pain, had surgery, feeling fantastic. But what developed alongside that was some really severe depression that I never really experienced, and usually the anxiety type. Now that I'm better and I'm like healing, but I don't live in chronic pain and I don't have that depression. When the anxiety comes up, I love this practice of like there's an emotional, or in Buddhism there's an emotional antidote for that emotion. So I'm feeling like I have the anxiety, which I need to like deal with, but there's this other lingering fear that I'm headed back to this horrible depression from before. I feel traumatized by having been through that, even though it's not there. So I actually realized recently that there are two things going on actually. One's the anxiety, and the other piece is the fear. And it feels like how do you deal with something like that? I mean, I think it's over time it'll probably become easier. I won't think like, oh, I'm going to go into this depression. But I know that's not uncommon if once people come out of a depression to kind of be afraid of going back into it. Mm-hmm. But when it's two separate actions, what's the antidote in that sense?
I mean, there's not necessarily just one antidote, but some people do purification practices.
Okay.
Consistently, and there's also one that's like an anti-insanity one, frankly. I mean, it's not labeled like that, but for those of you that are actually practicing Buddhist, there's a beautiful practice called the Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga. Lama Tsongkhapa is our patron saint, and he lived from 1347 to 1419 and founded Ganden Monastery outside of Lhasa. It's now reestablished in South India, and he was an incredible scholar, practitioner, genius, unbelievable. So there's a 5-line verse that is part of this practice that is really a request to the Buddhas of compassion, wisdom, and power, and to him. And he kind of embodies all of them. And somehow it's supposed to really be helpful for mental illness, like that. So some people just do that regularly as just a kind of maintenance. I mean, we have preventative medicine, right? And I would say that's preventative spiritual practice, that and Vajrasattva practice. So I think what I'd like to do this afternoon is introduce a little bit of Vajrasattva practice for those interested. I'll do it in a very light way, so if you're really not practicing Buddhist, it's no big deal, but it's just any kind of healthy practice of having light coming through you that's purifying stuff. Fantastic. And we'll do it in a sense like a white light meditation, which I think is really powerful. The Vajrasattva has a mantra attached to it, but it's very long, and I thought so we won't get bogged down. But these practices really just help maintain, because sometimes there's not much you can do. There's a karma created, and it ripens in certain ways, but that's how we minimize the negative karma ripening.
So what's that prayer called? The
Miksema.
Miksema.
And it's part of the Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga practice, which is a very profound practice. You can learn more about it, but that's a really brilliant 5-line prayer. And then separate from that, something we're going to talk about this afternoon is analyzing. Getting into the delusion, the anxiety and the depression, and analyzing a little bit, which we started to talk about. But that would be another way, like that.
Thank you.
What's your name?
Scott.
Scott, okay. So why don't we take a break for lunch? And are most people coming back this afternoon? Anybody? Okay, most people are here, great. So what I'd like you to do at lunch, if you go out or whatever you're doing, we're going to take an hour, okay, is I would try not to just blah blah about anything, but I would also try to stay focused again on countering what negative pattern you might notice comes up. If you find it's anxiety that's popping up, for those of you that suffer from anxiety, try to get a little sense of what are you really anxious about. I want you to go into the layers. What do you think you're really anxious about? Like, it might manifest as, oh, I'm gonna be late for this, but there's something under that, and there's something under that, and something. See if you can get down into it, to see what's really the worst thing you could be worried about in this anxiety. See if you can analyze. And does thinking about going into the layers, does it change it at all? It may not. Okay? For depressive stuff, see if you can also analyze as well. What is the source of the problem? Can you get to the source of the problem? Does that change it at all, how you're feeling? Just see if you can look at those. And if you're talking with someone else, see if you could explore what would it be in your life, even if it's a little revelatory, what would it be in your life to become aware of this behavior that's keeping you prisoner? What could you do that you could try something different? How could you really put that into practice? And how would you be able to commit yourself to continuing that practice until it's natural? Okay, does that make sense?
Mhm.
So we'll take an hour and have a good lunch.
Where can you have lunch here? Is there a kitchen here?
So what are the situations for lunch? Does anybody know? I'm not sure who's here from the center that,
The kitchen's not available, that's what the website said, but there's like snacks out there, and you can go somewhere, you would bring a lunch if you wanted.
Okay, I see, okay. So there are some snacks, Bill, and there's some restaurants.
There's a sandwich shop in that direction and around the corner.
Where can you have lunch here? I brought my lunch.
Oh, I think you
Or
can sit
eat it?
anywhere you want,
Anywhere.
any place you want. There's also a bookstore there, I think you can sit there. There is the living room with the TV, I think you can sit there and you can sit here. And if it's nice, you can sit outside. Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
is there a microwave or no?